thanks for giving this opportunity. And I'm sure this is one of the greatest, probably a blessing and a challenge to a lot of L&D professionals in the IT industry or any industry right now, because ROI is something really important, and many people are looking forward for it. And it's a very common topic, but a very difficult topic to answer and address, right? So yeah, with this, let's get into the topic of what exactly is return on investment, and especially in learning and development. So as Ganguly said, I have around 15 years of experience. Started my career as an assistant professor and then moved on into IT. So when you are in teaching field, basically, in a core academic background, nobody looks at the ROI. Okay, is the syllabus completed or not completed is the question most of the time you get. But when you come into IT or any other corporates, the question which comes is, okay, I'm investing so much, and what is that return I'm going to get out of this particular investment, correct? So moving forward, let's keep this session a little interactive. Okay, and as everybody is from learning and development background, I'm sure you agree that active participation keeps the session more engaged, right? So let's keep this more engaged and move forward. Now let me start with this question: like, how many of you are aware of ROI, and if you have any time implemented ROI in your career or in your office, in your organization? So we have a chat option, so you can open the chat option, and we can look at your answers here. So I'll wait for probably 30 seconds. Wait for some questions here, and then let's get into more. Hey Vishal. So fantastic. So I have another Srikanth in this group, and he has implemented and he has heard about ROI. What's your experience on ROI?
Do you want to type, or shall we answer here?
Anything is fine. I think as long as we all are able to understand what exactly it is, I think it should be good.
Right. So there is I think in nutshell, if I say, we have implemented the competency metrics into the organization. Mm-hmm. One is based on the availability of the people are on bench, and okay, aligned with the business line and given the respective proper training programs, and we converted as a build resource, and in that area only, on that extent, I think we have considered that this is the ROI for the organization in terms of.
Fantastic. That's a direct ROI which you are able to showcase, right? So fantastic. That's the way how we are supposed to showcase ROI. And it was easy for you because converting a non-billable guy into billable guy is a direct ROI which you can showcase, irrespective of the cost. Now, what happens if the person is already billable and they undergo a training, right? So how do you showcase the ROI? Because the billing rate doesn't increase just because you learn some new technology or a new competency. Now, how do you showcase the ROI? That's an interesting question. Any answers?
I think is short what the build amount which we there from non-billable to billable, and the total number of billed amount which we have, is that something ROI we used to count?
Yeah, agree, Vishal. So that's something which was non-billable to billable. Right. But my question is, for example, you have certain employees who are in training who are already billable, and they have undergone a training. And now what will be the ROI, and how can you show that? Because there's no increase in the billing rate.
Yes, right. I think that's so we require your insights on.
Yeah, so that's something very.
Srikanth, yeah. Will that be directly related to the person's SLAs then? What is the target? How much of the target he or she is achieved, and accordingly will it be measured then?
Yeah, fantastic. So now here, when we talk about this, there are some tangible and intangible measures which we need to take in terms of ROI. So it's very important that you need to identify the difference between what are tangible measures and what are intangible measures. So the moment you have that, it's easy for you to calculate certain ROI, even if the employee is billable. So now let's get into this session and have some deep dive analysis of what exactly is ROI, learn some methodologies and learn some elements in terms of how you can measure the ROI in a much more detailed manner, so that you get the right appreciation from your management, right? So let's get into this topic. So the first question, what is ROI and what do you think? So we have just heard about it. So it's a simple concept. It's a concept to reflect the benefits from a program, right? So what are the benefits that you're getting from this program? It's not just revenue all the time, right? So it's a return on inspiration, correct? So what is the, it's not just investment. There are many other factors which need to be considered, right? It's benefits cost ratio. So typically, whenever you go for a shopping or something like that, you say that, okay, I have invested 100 rupees. So how much am I going to get out of it? So as long as you get, anything above 100, then you say that, yes, I made the right investment. That's where you get more on your investment. Now, what's the formula for it? It's very simple. We know that it's cost, benefits minus cost, into 100 by cost. This is a simple formula which will give you the ROI, right? Now, everybody is aware of the formula. Benefits minus cost into 100 by cost. You get the ROI. So now the interesting part comes in. I'm sure, I think 3 minutes we are done with the session. But the important and the interesting factor is, how do we measure this benefits? How do you calculate the cost which is involved or inculcated for this training program? So these are the two important factors which will make you work more to give you the right outputs, right? Now, I've also asked this question. Have you anytime experienced this ROI calculation? So, Vishal has shared his experience. Shrikant also mentioned that he has implemented this, right? So what did we do? So have you conducted any studies? Have you never heard about this? We know, but do not have the real experience in it. So sponsors mentioned about ROI in discussions, requirements, and I wish ROI would go away, right? So most of the time, how it works in IT or any industry. Okay, you get a requirement and the timeline which is given to you is quite less. Hey, I have an urgent requirement. Client wanted me to get this training done in 1 week. So you go, you work, put all your efforts there, and then you go schedule the training program, and then you say that the training is done. Good, fantastic. Now, at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year, the management will come back to you and ask, okay, so what is the ROI on learning and development? So many organizations, many people fail there to give the right ROI perspective of what exactly have we done and how did we do that, right? Now, is return on investment impact needed in learning and development? That's another question. So we need to do a self-evaluation, right? So is ROI important? Can we calculate ROI for every training program? Or is it really, are the programs wasted? Did we lose any time here? It's whenever you conduct a program, it's not just with one person, one participant or two participants, right? You have more than 15, 20 participants. Imagine more than 60% of people are billable. Imagine the cost involved in that particular program, right? Now there are so many points which are coming up. People, that's number of participants, number of the billing rate of each and every individual, the duration of the program, the cost involved in conducting the program, right? So there are a lot of aspects which are coming in for you to make a note of it. Now, every point, is very, very important. The infrastructure, where do you conduct a training? There is an infrastructure involved in it. So everything is calculated. Now let's see how it works. So which of these is true? You can look at this. So most of the learning and development is wasted, not used or intangible. True or false? A quick answer, guys. Probably you can put it in the chat. False. Fantastic. The learning outcome desired by executives in organization is rarely measured. True or false? Very good. Very good. I'm glad that most of you are practical, right? So the next one, most learning providers do not have the relevant data showing that they actually make a difference in the organization. Absolutely, right? So that's the reason why we all are here and we are discussing about this. This is a very, very true statement. Okay, Deepak, it's interesting. It's a false statement. Let's, Deepak Srikumar, we will definitely discuss, okay? Next, we have most executives see learning as a cost and not an investment. True, false, okay? Now, interesting point is for a couple of people, why is it false? And a couple of people, why is it true? Because the organization which believes in learning and growth, they never look at as a cost. They look at as an investment. The organization which doesn't really look at learning as an growth in the organization, they feel that it's cost. But it's our responsibility as learning and development professionals to ensure that we educate our organization and the management saying that, hey, learning and development is not a cost, but it's an investment, right? And how do we do? By properly showcasing the ROI, I'm sure we can definitely measure, win the mindset of the management, correct? Fantastic. So most executives view hard skills more valuable than soft skills. True or false? True. No. True. Tapasya, very interesting. True by false, okay. Person dependent, equally important. Very good. Fantastic. Of course, you're supposed to answer either a true or false, but interesting answers, right? So most executives view hard skills more valuable than soft skills. Yes, most of the organization think that, the technical training programs or, some other programs which just give the business returns is the, we are more valuable than soft skills. Yes, again, as I said, it's our responsibility to ensure that we educate the management and the organization, correct? Now, why is ROI important and relevant now? Right? So it's very, very, I think some 10 years back, when IT is coming up or any industry which is coming up, they really did not focus on learning, right? Now it's like, after quite long, experience and challenges where they're seeing in the current industry, and they're looking at the skills, they're looking at competency development, and the kind of technology which is becoming redundant every year on year. You have new skills coming up. So learning and development has really, really become an important and critical part. So Shrikant, digital transformation is pushing investments in this space, correct? Yeah. So Manjunathan, you want to share your experience. So let's put your thoughts on hold and also put your views, because let's also look at the time. So it's I think 7:10 right now. So we should be ending this session in another 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and then we'll definitely have an open discussion and have a detailed discussion so that it's easy for everybody and time consuming, time saving as well, right? So why is ROI important and relevant now? Why not in the past? Because now people are looking at it, people are investing on it, and people want to really look at the returns on investment, right? So these are some very, very important options. It is the ultimate business case, correct? So today you get a project, How do you get a project? Only when you have the right competency which is there in the organization. If you do not have the competency, you will not even get the business, right? So L&D has become a dependent function in the HR, right? So shows the efficient use of funds. Typically, every organization has certain percentage of funds which are dedicated, like 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, depending on the revenue and depending on the investment which they would want to do in terms of growth of the organization, right? Validates that the expenditure is an investment, not a cost. Right, so this is an exercise which they do quarter on quarter. I'm not sure how many of your organizations does it, but typically nowadays most of the organizations started looking at this, and they wanted to have a quarter on quarter report and understand how is the return on investment and what kind of, are we doing the right investment, or are we doing the wrong investment? If we are doing any wrong investment, can we look at it and make the necessary changes, right? It's a way to keep score. So as you know, Warren Buffett, so he talks about always saving money, right? So, and how do we save it and how do we help it is something which he looks at. Helps to set priorities. As I said, it's very, very important that, these planned investment and planned structure will always ensure that you are setting up the priorities and, getting aligned more to the business, right? Now, as we discussed in the past slide, what is the formula for ROI? It's quite simple. Benefits cost ratio is equal to program benefits by program cost. So it's very, very important that you need to consider the program benefits and the program cost. Now, ROI formula is equal to net program benefits by 100 into program cost. Now, this is how the formula is divided or given, and now we have much more information under that. So when you say program costs, so program cost has multiple inputs, like as I said, the trainer cost, the material cost, the time spent by the trainer in the for the training program, the infrastructure, the billable rating, the cost of the people involved in the particular training, number of participants, their billing rate, duration, everything comes under this particular one. Now you can see an formula example here. So if you look at benefits cost ratio, you can see that, let's take 7.5 lakhs as program benefits. So the program cost is around 4.25 lakhs, right? So the simple ROI is 7.5 minus 4.25 by 4.25 into 100. So now this is the percentage. Now guys, please note a very, very important point. ROI is never shown in numbers. It's always shown in percentage, right? For example, in our first example, one of our friends said that, people were on bench and then we got trained and then, there was a billing on top of it, right? Now, if you say that the earlier billing rate was 0 and now there's a billing rate of $25 per hour, and calculating some 6 months of billing, and I have around some $50,000 as billing, it's wrong. Okay, it's not just the amount, it should be in percentage. So what was the percentage earlier? If it is a 0%, and if you're increasing it to 50 times, it should be 50% increase, right? So how do we get the net program benefits value? So the net program benefits value, you can see here. So this is nothing but the program benefits by cost. So you can see here, the net benefit value is nothing but the program benefits minus program cost is the net value. Okay. So moving on. So let's look at and understand, so that's the formula all about. I hope everybody is clear with this formula. So the formula is simple, guys. I'm sure there's nothing difficult for us to forget. But how do we get to that formula? How is it important for us to calculate? What do we need to consider to create that formula is something very, very important for us. So let's understand the level of data for measuring ROI. So beginning with the inputs, you can see the inputs here. So reaction and planned action, that's something which we need to look at. Learning, what is the learning which we got through that particular training program? What is the application of that learning? Okay, is another input which you need to consider. What is the business impact of applying that learning is another input which you need to look at. By considering this, that gives you return on investment. However, along with that, you also have some intangible benefits, right? For example, let's say, there's a soft skill training program which happened. Do you always get a direct return on investment on that? No, we don't get, correct? So it's more on behavioral aspect, it's more on soft skill aspect. But do you really see that there is a return on investment? Yes, there is a return on investment on that. And how do we calculate that, right? For example, there is a managerial program which is going on. Okay, and you have certain managers who attended the program and they involved in this training program and learned how to manage their team members. So with that learning, they were able to retain certain people. They were able to reduce the attrition in their current project. They were able to talk to the clients better. They were able to become a consultant and give more and more insights to the client, and client is impressed and he's ready to give more business. Now, these are all intangible benefits. Do you agree with me? So how do we assess the program benefits, which is qualitative? Yes, agree. So quality is something which is very, very important, and that is one of the intangible parameter which you actually consider for measuring the ROI. I'll come to that also. We'll discuss in our presentation on that, right? Now, so this is what it is, and these are the levels which we need to consider. So now let's get in more detail about what exactly is this measures. Okay, now let's understand the elements, right? These are the, we have around 6 elements which we are talking about. So level 1 is the input. How is learning different from intangible benefits for soft skill? Sure, I'll park this question a bit, and I'll definitely answer this, Tapasya, right? So we talk about, we are talking about the elements, right? So these are certain inputs, at level, as we speak about 6 different elements, right? So what are the focus and what are the typical measures you need to look at? So now, if you remember in our previous slides, here we spoke about the program benefits, right? So we spoke about program benefits and program cost, correct? Now, how do you measure the cost of the program? That's where we are talking about, right? So measurement focus, input into programs, including indicators representing scope, volume, time, cost, and efficiencies. So typically, what is this called as? Very interesting terminology, what we use all the time. I hope we all are aware of Addie model, ADDIE, right? So that's where our entire journey starts.
Yeah, analysis, design, development,
implementation, and evaluation.
Evaluation, yes.
Fantastic, right? So that's pretty much here, and we start the same process. And anytime this level is basically to focus on the training need analysis, right? So input into your programs. It's basically what are the inputs which you require for the programs. Indicators, what are the indicators for you to, deliver this program? Now, for example, there's a behavioral training which there was a request, or there is a technical training program which there is a request. So how do you get this indication? When you talk to the client, when you see that the performance of the employee is poor and they need certain technical skills to ensure that they're working and they're giving the right output, or if you think that the people are having some knowledge but it's taking too much of time for them to get crack this, they're losing time. So these are certain indicators, right? They do a proper analysis of their project, and then they come back to us and say that, hey, I think I'm facing a challenge and training is the solution for it. Now, it's our responsibility not to directly jump into an execution saying that, okay, chalo, let's get into a training and deliver this. Now you need to look at and do a proper analysis of that particular training requirement. So get into the details, like what are the program inputs, what are the indicators representing the scope of the particular training program, how many number of people are there, how many, what is the time involved in it, what is the cost involved in it, and what are the efficiencies you can look at. Why do we need to do this? Because if you do a proper analysis and analysis at the beginning, you can show exactly the effectiveness of that analysis through your evaluation process. That's exactly what we do, right? So now what are the typical measures at this level? Types of programs you need to deliver, number of programs you need to deliver, number of people involved in this training program, hours of involvement in this program, and cost of involvement in this training program. Now, these are certain elements at the input level, right? Agree with me? Great. So now let's look at the next one, reaction and planned action, right? So what is a reaction, right? Reaction to the programs, including participants, perceived value, and planned action to make them successful. That's the measurement focus what we are looking at. Now, what are the typical measures you need to look at when you are delivering the training program? So you did an analysis now. Now you want to design a program, and then you want to deliver a program. Now, what do you consider when you design and deliver a program? You need to look at the relevance of the training program, right? You need to look at the importance, usefulness, appropriateness, intent to use this particular program, motivation, and recommendation to others. Now, these are typical reaction and planned actions which you need to do while you're planning for any training program, right? So I'm sure you all agree, whenever you're delivering a program, you publish this in your newsletters, you publish across the organization, you send a communication to the stakeholders that there is a program going on, and what are the objectives of the training program, and who are the target audience of this particular training program, what is the duration of this training program, right? We do all these things, right? So we do this step by step, but we really don't know where do we tag this, right? Now, this is where you tag them, right? This is the steps, what we do. And now I'm just trying to bring to a proper shape to all the actions, what you're doing, right? Now let's move to the next level. Now, next level is basically on the learning side, right? When you talk about the learning again, it's very, very important that how do we look at the learning? Where do we learn? What do we learn? How much did we learn, right? And where are we implementing? So these are certain very important learning aspects what we look at, right? And are we learning the right thing? See, typically what we all do is at the beginning of the training program, and for example, it's a 20-hour duration training program. After 3 hours or 4 hours, typically we go and take a feedback. Why do we take a feedback at that point of time? Because we want to ensure that the training is going in the right direction. We do not want to lose time and then, say that, hey, unfortunately, we did not meet the right expectations, right? So that's a evaluation what we do. Now, next level, what we look at is application and implementation. So that's our I, which we talk about in the Addie model, right? So where do we implement? Where do we apply our learning, right? Application and use of knowledge, skills, and competencies, including progress made and implementation successful. So what are different kinds of applications and different kinds of implementation? Behavioral change, you can see, usage of the skill, whatever you have learned, completion of the tasks, by learning whatever you need to learn and implement, frequency of use, how frequently are you using that? How are you able to do that? Actions completed, right? It's more or less like the point number 3. Success with the use. Earlier you were unable to crack it. Now you're able to crack it. You are able to understand and you're able to solve if there are any challenges, right? These are all application and implementation. Barriers to use. Earlier you were facing some challenges. You were able to, you had some barriers, and now after learning you were able to crack the barriers. You now understand that there's a barrier and you can address that particular barrier with this knowledge or skill, whatever you learned, right? Enablers to use. So you have enabled, and if you feel that you can enable a couple of other people also, that's again a skill which you need. And proper engagement. So, most of the organizations, this is a very, very important point when we talk about engagement, right? Many people leave the job for 2 reasons. One, as known story, leave because of their managers. Number 2 is lack of proper engagement. I think the research also says that employees leave the organization for salaries around some 10th position or something like that, right? But most of the employees leave lack of proper engagement. Now these are certain levels and implementation, right? Now, what is the impact we look at? So impact, graduation rates, attrition rates, productivity, these are all directly which you can measure and see. The revenue, the quality, as one of our friends asked, how do we look at the quality? Now, this is where the quality comes into picture. We talk about the impact of the business. For example, earlier there was a person who used to do a coding, and once the code is done, you used to get some 100 or 120 bugs, and now after the training program, the bugs have reduced to probably some numbers which are single digit, or some 10s or 20s. That's where we talk about the quality of that, right? Jobs created, efficiency of that particular person who's able to improve with that particular knowledge. Incidents of diseases and leaves, typically this is out of this one. Retention, right? So this is again a retention. And today, very interesting point, most of the organizations come up with a lot of higher education programs, learning programs, managerial programs, tie up with a lot of other institutes. Why do we do all those things? It's basically to ensure we retain the people by giving them the right learning. What happens if you're giving the right learning? People get engaged and they stay with us for longer duration, right? And the best part is customer satisfaction. So customer is satisfied, and you get more and more business. So that's typically the impact what we look at from any training programs. Now, the last important point is evaluation, right? So in the Addie model also we have an evaluation. So how do you look at an evaluation of your training? It's nothing, and it's simple, which is called as return on investment. Comparison of monetary benefits from the program to the program cost. So it's the same thing what we talk about the formula, benefits, cost ratio, and ROI is in percentage, and payback period. This is something very, very important. Always remember, whenever you're talking about the ROI calculation, ensure that you are talking about the period. For example, there's a training which happened in June 2019. You should ensure that you understand when you get the return on investment. It is not that you calculate the return on investment next month and you showcase that to your management. No, you can't do that, right? You need to understand when this particular person is going into billing and when the return on investment can be seen. So sometimes it may take 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. So that expectation is to be set at the beginning of the training program with the management. That's when you can give the real numbers to them, right? So some intangible factors such as employee satisfaction, appreciation, loyalty also need to be accounted. So these are, as I was talking to you about intangible, these are certain things: employee satisfaction, employee engagement with the organization, the quality of the work. These are all intangible measures what we have, right? Now we looked at the 6 elements, right? Now how do we connect this ROI methodology model? So what we did is, most of you would be aware of software development life cycle, right? Yes, of course, Jagan. ROI can be measured continuously, because that will show you the growth of investment, and how you were able to grow from a particular month to another month. Yes, you can show it as a continuous over a couple of months, right? So now this is interesting. Now look, imagine that's there's a program which you design, right? So business alignment and forecasting, that's what you do at the beginning, right? Now what do? Payoff needs, you need to do a need analysis of it, right? And that too in terms of payoff. What is the cost of it, and how much it is involved and all. Business needs. The second important point what we consider is, what is a business need? I'm sure each one of you, take something called training requisition form. Do you get that from your business? Yeah, absolutely. As a part of TNI, right? So we do that and we get a training requisition form. Why do we need this training? How many participants are there? What is the business justification you need, right? So we do that particular exercise and we get the training we get the training requisition form. As a part of this is very, very important. You need to understand what is the payoff needs, what are the business needs of this particular training program, what is the performance need of this training program, why did we design that, right? We just discussed in our elements, right? Learning needs. Why is this learning important and why do we need this? Preference needs. How important is this? What is the priority of this? Do I need to prioritize immediately? Do I have some time for it? And how is it, right? Now these are the needs which you consider for delivering a training program. Now let's look at the other side of it. The ROI process model, right? How does it work? Now, reaction. You're getting into a reaction, right? Please elaborate business needs and learning needs. Okay, now business need is something where when somebody is requesting you for a training program, what is the business justification for it? For example, there's a project which is related to some integration, okay? And now they come back to us and say that, hey, I need a training on MuleSoft. Now, we will ask, why do you need a MuleSoft? Okay, now they say that it is an integration platform and we need this training for our business to run. Now that's a business need for us to learn. Now business need to get that particular training delivered. Now what is the learning need? Now look at the people who are working in that project, right? For example, there are 10 people working in the project and 9 people doesn't know what is that MuleSoft. Now that is a learning need, right? So that tells us around 9 people in the project are not aware of MuleSoft and I need to get. Hello? Do we have a question, guys? Okay. So yeah, thanks, Tapash. I think you got it right. Nice. So moving on for the ROI process model, we talk about reaction, right? So we talk about learning. So just look at this, guys. This is a beautiful comparison, and I think you can have this V model all the time, right? I'm sure you heard about V model in your software development cycle, like V model, waterfall model. What do you call the other one? Yeah, there are a lot of models in it, right? So the V model is what we can look at, because why do we consider V model? Because you have a comparison and it is easy for you to compare what was considered and what is the output, right? So look at the learning needs and what is the learning you achieved out of it. Performance needs is the requirement, and were we able to apply what you have learned is the requirement. And then what is the impact, business impact we are looking at. So business need has come, and are we able to do the right impact with the training program, right? And then comes the return on investment. Did we do the right investment, and what's the investment we got in return on this training program, right? That's exactly the V model. Now, these are reactive objectives, learning objectives, application objectives, impact objectives, and ROI objectives. This is very, very interesting, and this is called the V model methodology to implement, to consider your elements on ROI. Clear, everybody, till this point? Thanks, Jigan. Fantastic. So let's move on. Now, what did we discuss so far? We discussed about what is ROI. We discussed the formula of ROI. We discussed what does the formula consist of when calculating an ROI. Now, we also discussed what are different elements which need to be considered for us to calculate the ROI. And we also now discussed about the methodology, that's a V model for us to calculate the ROI in the right way, right? Now, let's look at a step-by-step guide for developing impact and ROI studies for learning and development, right? Now, this is a vision to convert the intangible into tangible, right? So most of the time we were talking about tangible, outputs as well, where we are talking about, right? So how do we convert the intangible to tangible? So are we ready, guys, to learn this? So it's, I think 7:40, probably we'll spend another 10 minutes and we should be good. So now let's look at the 12 easy steps for us to, look at this tangible and intangible, converting the tangible and intangible things. Now, this is what we have in place. There are 4 interesting levels. Number 1, which is called as plan the evaluation. Number 2, collect the right data which is needed for you to calculate the ROI. Number 3, analyze the data which you have picked up from the beginning of the training program till the end of the training program and use it in a definite and appropriate manner so that you can show optimized results through your ROI calculation. Now, these are 4 different stages of implementing the ROI, right? So these are 12 different steps of ROI methodology and are logically and systematically implemented, representing a different logical method, right? Now these are the 4 stages. Now let's look at one by one, right? So number 1, always whenever you are talking about an ROI or whenever you're talking about a training program, right? What is the first question you need to ask? Start with the question, why? Why do we need this training program, right? So why, what does this why give you? This why will give you an answer of aligning this right program to the business, correct? So every time we deliver a program, but the program is assigned, we do all the efforts, trust me guys, I think in off late, I've seen that L&D is the department which works really hard, correct? But at the end of the day, if we are not able to showcase the work, what we are able to do in the right way, people doesn't value us, correct? So it's very, very important saying that how do you align this program to the business? That's an important question, what as an L&D professional you need to ask, right? Why of programs is like, what does the business need? As a clear business measure, you need to get that, right? Pinpoint 1 or more business measures already in the system that should improve as a result of the programs. You need to pinpoint these programs, measures, right? Is this program worth doing? Is this a problem worth solving? Is this an opportunity worth pursuing? Right? So these are the questions. The moment you ask this why, you start getting these kind of questions. Ensure that you need to get this whys. And typically it is nothing but your training requisition form. If your training requisition form has the right inputs, that is a question and that itself is an answer for you. Do you agree with me? Great. Right. So, but at times the business impact details very vague. Yeah. See, I understand that particular point, but as long as you are able to, for example, new project, exactly, so what happens is it's not just the new project, Tapasya, it's also, existing project, whenever they want to upgrade their project or whenever they want to upgrade their platform, you get some vague requisitions and the business itself doesn't have an answer for it. But down the line, we have an impact. That's where we also looked at the duration. When should you start looking at an ROI is a question which you need to have in the training requisition form. Today, most of our training requisition forms doesn't have the column which talks about the impact on the business from when, correct? Do you agree? Absolutely. So going forward, implement this particular clause in your training requisition form saying that from when do you see the business impact? That is an important factor for you to consider for the ROI. What happens? For example, there's a training which is delivered in June. Okay. Now, June is the end of one of the quarter. You pull out the report and you say that there is an investment of 5 lakhs in this quarter. Where is the ROI? You don't know. Because the project is expecting to start working on that particular technology probably in the last quarter of the third quarter of the year, which is from probably October, November, December, right? So this training requisition form should have that clause saying that when is this implemented, so that I can start calculating the ROI. That is very, very important for us, right? Let's move on. So this is point number 1. So where we are talking about 12 easy steps, right? Now this is the step 1. Now what's the step 2? Where is this? Yes, make it feasible. Select the right solution. So guys, every time an instructor-led training may not be the right solution. Every time an e-learning may not be the right solution, right? Every time an on-job training may not be the right solution. You need to look at the cause. You need to look at the business need. You need to look at the impact of the business, and then select or identify the right delivery model for that. Correct? So this particular step, in terms of selecting the right solution, determines how to improve the business measure by identifying the cause of the problem, right? Or exploring various approaches to address this opportunity, right? Now we have a lot of delivery models like blended model. Now, for example, there is a managerial training program, right? A managerial training program always need not be an in-person training program. Yes, it may be when you have the participant from the same location, or when it is really impactful by giving them the real-time case studies, making them work on the case studies and addressing them. It may definitely bring you some real-time return on investment on that, right? You need to look at various important aspects, like what are the performance needs. You remember we spoke about the V model, right? You look at the performance needs, look at the learning needs, look at the preference needs, and according to that, you can look at it, right? The best solution is typically identified and implemented according to the business need, right? There are 3 questions you must be, which need to be addressed all the time. What needs to change to influence the impact measure? That is something which you need to ask. What can enable this change, right? So this is an important question you need to ask. And what is the best solution? These are the 3 questions for you to ask yourself, so that you will come to the right solution, which is the best fit for that particular training program. Agree with me, guys? I hope we are not lost anywhere. Thank you. So the next point, what we talk about is the next step: expect success, plan for results, right? This is something which we always talk about, right? So you need to expect the success and plan for results. So how do you do that? You need to forecast. You need to look at, the end results. So there is a statement, right, which we always use in our training programs. Start with the end in mind, right? We always ensure that we need to look at the end, anticipate what are the challenges in between, and then work towards addressing those challenges, and then implement this. That's when you're able to execute the program with complete plan in your mind, right? So execute success, plan for results. This is a 3rd step which you need to consider. What's the 4th step? Make it matter. Design for inputs, reaction, and design for input, reaction, and learning, right? So you need to develop program with content which is relevant, meaningful, and which every individual thinks that, yes, this is important for me, this is important for the organization, and this is really useful for me. That's when you need to look at. These are the things which you need to really consider. Okay, let me ask you an interesting question. Where does this come in your Addie model? This step, okay, fantastic. Thanks again. So this comes in the design part of it, right? So how do you design the entire program? Thanks, Bindya. This comes in the design pattern, where you start considering all the inputs, whatever you need. What is the learning which is needed? What is the outcome which you are looking at, right? So according to that, you start designing your program. So the 2 types of outcome data at this step should be collected are reaction and learning. These are the two outcomes which you need to look at. Fourth step. Now, what's the fifth step? Make it stick. Design for application and impact, right? So how do you make it stick? For example, there may be a lot of programs, which you design. See, what happens is today, internet is so helpful and so available for us that there's nothing that you need not really have in mind. You have a problem, ask Google. Google will tell you, right? For example, you go to Google and type saying that essential skills for a program manager. Do we get the answer? We will get the answers, right? Now, what do? We pick up these topics and we design a program and we say, let's go ahead with this program. Now, do you really think that that's going to give an impact? It doesn't sometimes. Sometimes out of luck, we may get it, but sometimes it doesn't, because every program is developed because of a challenge. We read it in the previous slides, right? You need to understand what is the requirement and only then design the program, right? Because at the end of the day, if there is no effectiveness of that particular training program, your entire program, your efforts and everything is of no use, right? So that is again another step. So guys, do not get deviated. Why we are discussing all these things is this 12 easy steps will help you to get to the right ROI, measure the ROI, and talk when you have an ROI, right? For example, the reason why I'm talking about all these things is you have a formula in place. You take an Excel sheet, you put all the numbers in that particular one, and the last column you put the formula, you get the number. But when you go to the management and present your data, you need to have the right input to talk to the management, right? So these are certain important elements which you need to consider and talk, because this will give you the complete information of why a training is requested, how is it executed, how is it implemented, what is the learning, what is the business impact, and how we are able to measure the business impact. That's basically the ROI, right? So that's where it is. So now this step is typically to collect two important information. Where is that this training program is being applicable, and what is the impact of this training program? This is the step 5. You need to look at that. What is step 6? Make it credible, right? Isolate the effects of the program. So one of the most critical steps, right, in this process is to isolate the effects of the program on impact data and identify the amount of impact directly connected to this program, right? You need to look at that impact. For example, there is let's go back and talk about the technical program which we looked at, right? Why MuleSoft? Why not anything else? Now, the reason why we picked up MuleSoft is because the client wants MuleSoft. Why client wants MuleSoft? Because there are applications which are already working in that project, which is much more aligned to MuleSoft. Do we do such deep dive analysis, guys? If not, we need to do that, because you need to answer for the questions for what the management asks. Why this training? Why not this? Because the multiple technologies, multiple platforms for every kind of solution what we have. As a learning and development professionals, it is very important for us to ask these questions. Do not go ahead and execute the training when you get the training requirement. When do you see a growth in you as an L&D professional? When you start questioning. That's when they see a value add in you, saying that, yes, this is something which is making sense for me. And that's where this training program brings a good value to me. They start thinking, they will give you the right information. And that's when you're going to become a successful L&D professional. And they will see a value in whatever we are doing, right? Now, let's move on to the next point. So again, convert data. Absolutely, we call this as a pull effect, right? So how do you pull? This is how you pull, correct? Fantastic, Jagan, thank you so much. So make it credible, convert data to monetary value. Now, whatever data you talk about, that's when the magic lies in terms of converting that into monetary value. Okay, let me ask you one simple and interesting question. Let's take an example that all the IT industries are now fascinated with English communication skills. More people, we need to speak in English for us to talk, communicate, or whatever it is, etc., etc. Now, there is a language training for 20 people, which is delivered because they have poor communication skills. Now the management comes and asks, guys, you have invested around 40 hours of training, and there were 20 people in it, right? So typically, how many hours is it? It's around 800 hours. Now imagine that there is an investment or billing rate of around $20 per person per hour. So it is into 20, correct? So it means it is around $16,000 of investment which is done for the training program. Now that particular person comes back to you and asks, what is the return on investment on this training program? How do you do? What is the answer? Right? It's a tough question. Okay, let's go ahead. I think we have very short time. So the interesting part is, whenever you talk about a language training program, the impact of the training program is you save the business. It brings in with people who speak that language. We can track the billability. Okay, the billability is anyway tracked. How do you show the return on investment on that? For future projects. Okay, guys, here is the secret. Okay, there is a research for future projects or live project client escalations. Yeah, fantastic. That's a good point. Client escalation. So that is an intangible measure again. So client escalations coming down is something which is an intangible. So what is the tangible measure here? So the tangible measure here is, the research says that whenever there's a language upgradation in your communication skills, typically you save 1 hour per week in your work. So that 1 hour of billing is the profit what you can show. Got it? So like that, there is a research which talks about the duration which can be saved with the skill which you have learned. From a soft skills, from a behavioral aspect, and from a language aspect. Typically from a behavioral aspect, yes, customer CSAT again, fantastic. That's another intangible point you can look at, right? Right. So these are some interesting factors which we can consider, right? So that's how it works for us, right? So yes, so we are in the number 7, right? Now, convert data into monetary benefits. That's what we look at. To calculate the ROI, improvement in business measures must be converted into money. At any cost, you cannot show the numbers. You cannot say that, okay, my client is very happy, so I saw an investment. No, how is the client happy, right? So that's where you can talk about. So have some research, do some research. There are certain various methods of calculating this. Now, let's move on to our 8th step, which is identify intangible measures. So now it is very, very important that you need to identify intangible measures. So, client escalation is an intangible measure, right? So when I say intangible measure, there's no cost involved in it. When you say that, okay, there were 10 escalations in the past, today I have only 2 escalations, correct? The work is not that, you're completing this in before 1 week. So that's an intangible one, right? So that's something like that. So make and identify the intangible measures. Examples are like, what is the reputation of the organization? By speaking well, by having good communication, your reputation increases. That's an intangible measure. Teamwork. Earlier, probably the team was not working well. Now there's a proper coordination in the team and there is an improvement in the progress. That's an intangible measure. Happiness. People who are not happy in the past, now they're very happy. That's an intangible measure. Sustainability, engagement, probably like success of the project. Risk of the project is again an intangible measure, right? And most importantly and interestingly, you can also say work-life balance, correct? Most of the people say that, this job is too much. I don't have proper work-life balance. I'm spending 14 hours, 15 hours of work and then go. A simple time management and prioritizing your work training can help you better plan well, and there may be an improvement in your work-life balance. Do you agree with that? Yes. Yes, that's a very important point. You can consider employee retention, yes, as a measure, and that is that need not be an intangible measure. It can be a tangible measure because it calculates the amount of amount spent in hiring a new candidate. In your in a couple of calculations, for example, there is a freshers training program which is happening in the organization, right? So you can calculate the measure, and you can put that number in this employee for the employee retention which you use. For example, you go to the market, hire a lateral employee with 6 years of experience, or getting the fresher trained on that. So get a fresher trained, you must be spending around 3 lakhs, but you are hiring a candidate from the market for 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs, right? Imagine, it's a direct return on investment you can showcase, right? Now, the next important point is about capture costs of the program. So what are different costs involved in that, right? So you need to do a proper analysis, cost involved for assessing the candidates, cost involved in designing the candidate, designing and developing the program, because there may be professionals from learning and development who are involved in developing that particular program. What are the software or tools which are using? For example, most of your organizations use learning management system to track this. Many people doesn't even consider that. Guys, you need to consider that, because that's an investment done on learning and development, right? Program materials. For example, there is a study material which you are giving. There are certain workshops which you're conducting. There are charts involved, there are pencils, pens, certain infrastructure, Legos, etc., which are used. That is calculated. Facilities, the infrastructure, the training rooms, right? The tables, everything is calculated in that, right? The cost of the facilitator, the cost of the coordinator, the cost of the operations guy who is involved, right? Their CTCs are calculated in that. The administrative and overhead costs, you need to calculate the administrative and overhead costs of that, and the evaluation, the cost impact or the ROI study. These are certain things which you need to capture, certain costs which you need to capture for the program. These are very, very important, right? Now, calculate the return on investment. So how do you calculate the return on investment? Remember the formula, guys? It's simple, right? The ROI is nothing but program benefits minus program cost into 100 by program cost. So that's the formula. Keep that formula all the time. And that's how you calculate the return on investment. So now when we talk about this, it's very, very important that you narrate the story. This is a key probably step, for example, to showcase all the efforts what you have put in. We do, that's what I've been saying, right? We do the mathematical calculation. You open an Excel sheet, you put a formula. In 5 minutes, you can pull out the numbers for all the training programs you have done in last quarter. But how do you narrate this to your stakeholders? How do you communicate these results to your stakeholders? It's very, very important for them, right? So again, do not just go and say that, hey, we have done this program on time management and people really liked it and they have appreciated it. No, that is not the return on investment, right? So you need to talk about numbers again here. For example, communicate the values or beliefs, right? Like, for example, there are certain learning objectives which are met with that. Consider the learning objectives and talk a percentage. Around 30%, that we could see some increase of 30% of people implementing their values, right? We could see around 60% growth in their communication skills, right? We could see the reduction of customer escalations from 20 to 10, right? Which is basically, 50% reduction. So those are the numbers you need to talk about. Talk the story, tell the story, and, communicate the results to the stakeholders, right? So now the last point, optimize results. Use the black box thinking to increase funding. So the black box is basically, we talk about, analyzing the data with basically having a goal in mind to identify the factors. Ensure that you're talking about that. Identify the loop area. Work on that. Show that the results and say that this is the benefit which we have brought to the organization. So this is how you need to showcase the ROI so that the management looks up to you and never will focus on funds, but only look at what is the return and how impactful it has brought to the business. Now, these are 12 very, very interesting steps which you need to follow to get the right ROI, right? Now, any doubts on this? Are we clear? Are you guys able to follow till now whatever I spoke about? Great. So now let me ask you a very interesting question of this. What are the challenges while calculating ROI, right? So this is something which you can keep it handy, right? Converting output to contribution, standard value, right? Converting the cost of quality, standard value. Converting employees' time, that's again converting to standard values. Using historical cost, what was the cost in the past? What is the cost now? And if you can anticipate some cost, hike in future, you can use that as well. And then using internal and external experts. For example, always when you're talking about ROI calculation, do not forget to involve what is the cost involved for this training if you're doing it internally, what is the cost involved when you're doing it externally. That is a comparison cost which you can include all the time in your ROI calculation, right? Using data for external database, that's what I said. From the external database, you can use it. Linking with other measures. You ensure that you are linking with the right measure. Do not include with the wrong measure, right? So how do you get the right measure? Again, we can look at the V model, identify for what it is, and against that, are we getting the right evaluation done or not is the right measures you need to look at. Using participants estimates, using supervisors and managers estimates. So when you say estimates, they are nothing but the feedbacks. Take the participant feedback from the training program. Anytime you see that there is a rating which is 4.5 and above, you see that the participant is engaged in the training program, they have learned it well, right? And using supervisors and managers estimate, it's nothing but the effectiveness of the training program. I'm sure you all implement the training effectiveness also, because that is the closure of your life cycle of a training program, right? And that is typically collected in 30, 60, 90 days. You can go back and you can look at it. It depends on how soon you want to look at the ROI. You can look at 30 days implementation, 60 days and 90 days as well. And using staff estimates, which is nothing but the peer feedback. Now, these are different challenges which you look at while calculating the ROI. As long as you're able to address this, you can able to crack your ROI and show the right benefits to the organization. So this is typically what I thought of bringing to you, to you as an ROI. Now we are open for question and answers. Okay, Tapasya, you had one question in the some time back. How is learning different from intangible benefits for soft skills? I hope now it is answered, right, in terms of tangible and intangible. I hope it's clear for you now. Little long question. Allow me to type, please. Okay, no problem. I think you can even directly ask it. Riyansh, if you're able to speak, you can even ask the question directly. Everybody can hear that. Guys, please feel free to ask your questions here. Or Ganguly, did you receive any questions so that I have anything to answer?
Not so far. So.
Okay.
Yeah, or also they can draft a question and they can send it to us. Probably we can send it to you once you are free. Probably we can address in that way also can.
Sure, sure. So anyway, Riyansh is typing a long question. Let's wait for him.
Okay.
Any other question, guys, in the meanwhile? Or, generally, we ask this after the training program, either you understood everything or you did not understand anything because there's no question. Okay. Anubhavi, right? So thanks for I have a doubt. Does ROI always to be for external training, or can we use the same method for internal training considering the trainer time? Yes, of course. That's where I was talking about, where I was talking about considering the trainer cost, infrastructure cost, the training material cost. Yes, you need to consider that. ROI is not just for external training program. It is for internal, because there is an investment that the organization is doing on the L&D team. So every year on year, they want to see, am I doing the right investment in this, or am I not doing the right investment? They will definitely do. For example, there's a technical training program which you have scheduled by an internal SME, okay? And the internal SME comes back to you and says that, the training is delivered, but it was not impactful. So what does that tell us? It means that the internal SME could not deliver the training program the way how it is supposed to be. So then you go for an external. Yes, absolutely, you can do it for ROI can be calculated for internal also. Yes, you need to, in fact, not per day cost. Now, I think earlier we used to deliver, whole day training, but nowadays most of the trainings are converted into 2 hours or 4 hours, depending on the billing, where they cannot pull the employees from the project for such long time. So you can even go ahead and do it for hourly basis as well. Okay, did I answer your question, Anubhavi? Thank you. So, Riyansh, in Bloom's taxonomy, we measure the impact of training across the levels. ROI is the highest level of evaluation. How do we decide when to target the ROI? See, typically when you look at ROI, it is at the beginning of the training program itself. When you don't look at any return on whatever you're trying to do, then there's no use of going ahead with the training program. So you need to look at the ROI at the beginning of it. So that's where I said, please start with the end in mind. So that's where you will really realize whether this training program is really important or not. Let me also give you a perspective from a participant side. Whenever you are calling a participant for a training program, you keep on calling people saying that, hey, there is an interesting training program. It's a model which we talk about trying to push people. But as one of our friends said, that use the pull model, right? How do you make it as a pull? If they see a value in your training program, they will come for the training program. So that value is nothing but the ROI. For the participant, it will be the content, it will be the learning, it will be the objectives. For the management, it is the ROI, which they look at how much is being invested, how many people are trained, what is the impact of the business. So Purva, it is very simple. It is always important that how do you bifurcate this? So have the calculation in place. Every training program, as I mentioned, internal and external. I can do one thing. I recently worked on an Excel which has the huge formula. That Excel has the inputs right from the trainer cost per hour, the material cost, the infrastructure cost, the duration of it, and the number of participants, their billing. So you can create an Excel, create the Excel with the formulas, which we spoke about in the whole session. And then all that you need to do is just put the numbers and you will get the ROI at the end of the Excel sheet. So make it simple. This is a one-time exercise which you need to do, but yes, you can do. If you're saying that there are a lot of training programs which you're delivering, you need to ensure that you are having this table form. Did I answer, Purva? Okay, now calendar-based programs, again, see, I'm really, really happy that you're bringing this point. See, typically what happens is calendar training programs, you think that, ठीक है, मुझे एक training करना है, इसलिए मैं training कर रहा हूँ, okay? Or I need to deliver a training, that's why I'm delivering a training, okay? Let's not give that impression. Today, the organization or the management is having an impression saying that, okay, learning and development team is delivering certain trainings because they're supposed to deliver it. No. Every training program, when you say calendar-based programs, how do you come to a conclusion that this program need to be delivered? And what is the what do you call requirement of this training program? We need to do a proper evaluation, irrespective whether it is a calendar program, whether it is a need-based training program, whether it is an ad hoc request. You should be able to do that. I'll give you an example, right? Your calendar-based programs are typically the organizational requirements on the training. Your organization comes back to you and says that, hey, Purva, I have around 300 managers and I want them to be trained on managerial skills. Now that's where you properly plan for a calendar-based programs and you schedule them, right? You have them coming, participating, and then attending the program. There is a need. So in our training and in our session, we spoke about how do you calculate that? That comes under your organizational requirement. Understand the organization requirement, and then you can showcase the ROI. So see, when we say reactive, I think it's very rare case that we get into reactive mode, because that is basically the need based. Okay, so it's not a reactive, it is a business requirement. So sometimes the business requirement may come at the in a very planned manner. Sometimes it may come as an ad hoc requirement. You cannot say that it's a reactive, because the client himself would be realizing that, hey, this is something which I needed at this. For example, they worked on a cloud service like Amazon Web Services. They want to move to Azure, which makes sense for them and which is more business impact. You cannot say that it's a reactive mode, because it's a business requirement for them and they move from that point to other point. Okay, so there's another question. Against the training requirement, keeping impact outcome for 3 months, how can we track ROI on a quarterly basis? We have quarterly update on exactly. So that's where I was talking about, Anubhavi. We need to have this clause questioned in the training requisition form. So whenever there's a training request, you need to ensure and ask, from when do you think that this is being implemented? As long as you have that answers, you can go back to the management and say that, hey, look, this training is delivered. Looking forward for implementing this for a billing after 3 months. There are many training programs that, today you get trained and tomorrow you get billable. So very, very less opportunity. At least there should be 2 to 3 months for you to ensure that you're getting some billing on that particular requirement, right? So this is all projection. You need to project that this is a training in Q2, but the returns you can see from Q4 onwards. You can project that. Yeah, correct. So more than that, these requirements are organization specific and project and business specific. Planned business training, get into calendar. Absolutely. Okay. When a company is global or geographically depressed, how can you disperse? How can we calculate this? Make it geo-specific. It's easy. So when you say, for example, the current organization, what I work, we are into US, UK, and Canada and India. Okay. So I always showcase ROI for 4 different regions, because the requirements are different. The business objectives of that particular geography is different. and the cost involved in training on different things are different. At the end, you can showcase as a consolidated investment and the return on investment, but you can always showcase as a geo-wise specification.